in a certain segment of these algorithms, there is some evidence that they have higher rates of mistakes for African Americans and Asians. Is that Asian Americans? Is that?
It is correct that most of the algorithms in the one-to-many that are submitted do exhibit those differentials. The highest performing ones in the one-to-many do not.
Okay, so some do and some do not. I'm just trying to clarify. Thank you all for being here. I'm from Michigan, so we have a long history of needing our CBP officers to protect us at the Detroit airport and all of our bridges and crossings. So can you help me understand, is this technology, Mr. Wagner, being used in any way at our bridge crossings in the northern border?
No, not at the bridge crossings.
Okay, but at the airport.
At the airport,
I know
yes.
at the airport. So while I recognize it seems to be a small number of times or of these programs where there's they've detected more problems with particularly African American women, I think were mentioned, and Asian Americans. Walk me through the process where it would be sort of, you're an average citizen, you're from my district, you're an African American woman. Let's say we employ this technology and it shows a positive, right, a link. Just walk me through that process and how you would deal with that at the actual border for that actual citizen.
You would then just show your passport, which is what you do today, and a person would manually review it if you did not match.
Mm-hmm. And if they showed the passport, but the technology still showed a match, what does that officer do in that situation? If the machine is saying one thing and the passport is saying another?
We would go on the basis of the document we're presenting and which photograph we've identified you with or which identity we've identified you with.
Okay, and then that person would cross the border and go on with their I'm just asking for the average person to understand how this is being implemented.
What we're matching people against U.S. citizens is that passport photo.
Yep.
We have an electronic copy of that passport database. When you're flying into the country, we pre-assemble a gallery of those photographs, and that's what we match you against. So on the officer's screen, they'll see the photograph, which should be also what's printed on your passport, which also should be on that electronic chip in your passport. We'll look at you and make sure you're all that same person. If it doesn't match against that, then we'll have to figure out why.
And when you figure out why, is that individual allowed to progress? You know, we go to Windsor to like see a concert, and we go to Canada quite often in Michigan. So
it could be as simple as just looking at your passport document and saying, okay, that's you.
Okay.
And then we'll figure it out later what happened.
And then what happens with that data, right? So let's say a woman has gone to her concert in Canada. What happens to her data where it's flagged that she's matched against, falsely flagged that she's matched against someone who's done something wrong? What happens in the department to that information?
If you're a U.S. citizen, the new photograph we take is discarded after 12 hours. There's no need for us to keep the new photograph. There's a record of the transaction that you crossed the border. If there's some type of error in that, then our analysts would look at it and correct it, basically. Mm-hmm. If you've matched, which happens very often in a biographical sense, your name, date of birth to the wrong person, even though your biographic match is identical to someone else, that's where we can also use the facial recognition to help us distinguish between the people with the common names. Mm-hmm. And we can put notes in the system then to advise the officer to suppress that information from even appearing when we query your passport the next time. And
tell me how this technology, where you've been implementing it at different airports and different land borders, I understand in the South, tell me what are the results? How many people have you identified in a positive way that meant what needed to be identified? Tell me some statistics to help me to demonstrate the value of these programs.
Sure, it's 43.7 million people we've run through it to date at all the different locations, inbound, outbound, cruise ships, land border pedestrians. We have caught 252 imposters, people with legitimate travel documents belonging to someone else. I think 75 of those were U.S. travel documents. And remember, U.S. travel documents, the only biometric we have is that digitized photo that State Department has put on the electronic chip. There's no fingerprint record, there's no fingerprint requirement to get a U.S. passport. I'm not advocating for one, but there isn't one there, so the only biometric we have on a U.S. travel document is that digitized photograph. And that's a worldwide standard. and that chip is allowed to be opened by any country participating in that ICAO scheme. They can access the chip and pull off the digital photograph and then do some type of comparison to that.
So in my remaining time, tens of millions of people that you've used that have gone through this technology, how many, just tell me a little bit more about your stats. How many positive stories, how many negative hits?
So our match rate is about 97 to 98%. That 2 to 3% generally means we couldn't find that person in that pre-assembled gallery, meaning we didn't match against anything. We didn't match against the wrong person. We just didn't find a match of people traveling. There could be various environmental or operational reasons.
How
why
many
that
were
might
false
happen.
positives?
I'm not aware of any,
Okay.
but there may be a small handful. I'm just not aware of any. But as we built this and tested it, we're just not seeing that.
I think my time has expired. Thank you, gentlemen.